Hi, I'm Kyle.
And I'm Trevor. And today we both caught up on cinema.
Yes, we did.
I proposed that we watch the film from 2015, Turbo Kid.
Yes.
I had heard about this film around the time it was doing the film festival circuit, and I kind of kept it in the back of my mind. I have a really, really, really bad habit of picking out movies that look right up my alley and getting really amped for them and, telling all my friends about them and then ending up being the last person to see them. And this was a case of that happening because, as I said, this came out in 2015, and it was only just last night that I watched it. And I suggested this as an episode because from what I know of Kyle's taste in cinema, this seemed like something he might enjoy. So, Kyle, what did you think of Turbo Kid?
It's a unique film. I think it's a lot of fun. It's a Quebec film. It's a joint. It looks like it was a joint production of New Zealand and Canada. It had three directors on it. I think one of the directors was also a writer, and she was also in the movie. She plays the main kids. I didn't catch names in this at all.
Okay.
The young boy's mother at one point, but this came out a year before Stranger Things, so this came out roughly when the first season of Stranger Things was probably being filmed. Because I can definitely see some similarities from Stranger Things. I know you haven't watched it; it's on Netflix, but there's definitely an '80s vibe to this movie.
Very, very hard '80s vibe. We're currently in a interesting era when it comes to media, where there's '80s throwback stuff has kind of been a thing for the past decade, but now it's like stronger than ever, it seems. And now we've gotten to the point where like there's almost like an entirely new subgenre of film where it's like '80s nostalgia films, where the aesthetic is meant to be paying homage to that which came before. But if you ask me, certain elements of it are something else entirely. Because the score of this movie in particular, I think the genre of music is called synthwave. I only know that because I have a couple of friends who are really, really into it. When I listen to that music, it sounds like stuff from the 80s, but at the same time, I don't think it actually is authentic. I think it's something entirely new that's just kind of borrowing, I guess. And a lot of this movie pays homage to like other brands from the 80s, and it's explicit at times, but like you said, it's very unique at the same time. It has a look and a feel that's very much its own. But at the same time, it feels familiar.
It feels foreign, but you can't quite put your finger on it. It's weird because it seems like most of the actors and actresses in this are American or surprisingly Canadian, but you can just tell by the production, like it feels like a different country. I was going to say one of the movies that does the 80s throwback kind of throwback style really well is House of the Devil, which I think it was Ty. Is it Ty West? Is that his name? The horror director. I think that's his name. It's really very neat.
Familiar. The only other Ty I know is Burrell, I think.
Yeah, that's not him. But yeah, it's supposed to be shot like it's in the 80s. The editing is supposed to feel like the 80s. The clothes, the style. It's a really neat film. But anyway. But yeah, so Turbo Kid, this seems like a post-apocalyptic. This kind of is like Waterworld and Mad Max. A little bit of both, it feels like.
It's a lot of elements to this, especially from an aesthetic standpoint, feel like a pastiche of things that have come before. But that actually plays into some of the themes of the storytelling. The very first shot of this movie opens with, I think, a narration from someone who sounds Aussie. Again, lending credence to the whole Mad Max connection. And I think it's explained that, there was an apocalypse of some sort. There's like acid rain. Like the world has gone to shit essentially, and now everything's called the wasteland. And if I remember right, there's an on-screen title here that says in the year of 1997, and I kind of got a kick out of that. I thought that was cute. Especially since it's my understanding, and you see this in like other forms of stories, like the Fallout games and stuff, and the Mad Max movies for that matter. I like this idea of like mainstream culture as we know it dying at a very specific point in time, and then everything that comes after that is like a loose facsimile of how we understood things to have been before.
Or like a relic.
Yeah, and I really loved how they did that in this movie. It reminded me of Mad Max Fury Road. How a lot of the terminology in Mad Max, in particular Fury Road, it's not quite correct. Like it seems like somebody working with what they had and approximating the meaning of things. Like for instance, gasoline becomes like guzzling, and things like that I get a kick out of. And in Turbo Kid we have things like everybody seems to be a hoarder in this world, and everybody seems to be collecting relics from a bygone age that I guess was about 10 years ago.
I love the opening to this movie.
Yeah, so did I.
We get like cool 80s production titles, like the titles, the songs, and then
oh yeah, the song, sorry to interrupt, but the song is Thunder in Your Heart. It's from the movie Rad. It's like a BMX movie.
Gotcha.
Because it was the 80s. But the rendition of it is a remix. The original, I think, was sung by John Farnham. And I know this because I have a small collection of these particular types of songs. And this rendition of it is done by the legendary Stan Bush, the master of the pump-up song. And that, I was on board. Like, as soon as I heard him, I was like, fuck yes, I'm in.
So one of the first things we see are heads on pikes. Now, I said that this movie was unique, and I think that it's unique in that it has a unique tone. Because it's not it's kind of dark, but even when like there's dark comedies, but like even when it's dark, it's still not really dark. It almost seems like a horror comedy. Like it more has the tone of like a horror comedy for me, where it's an eerie tone but not scary. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, put a pin in that.
Okay.
Because so like the first scene in this movie, we're introduced to our main character. I think he doesn't even have a name. I think his name is just like the Kid. Soon to be Turbo Kid.
It's the Kid. His name is the Kid.
Yeah, he's riding around on his bike. He's scrounging around the wasteland, and one of my favorite props in the movie is his little notebook. At one point, he's collecting some shit, and he pulls out a little notebook, and it's all drawn in crayon, and he has a map that's like drawn in like cartoons, and I was like, that's adorable. That's awesome.
It was neat.
Because I mean, if I could totally see a kid doing that. And this kid kind of reminds me of like Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes in some ways, like just without Hobbes.
You can tell like you talk to him for a little bit longer. He's probably got a smart mouth.
Yeah, and then we get our montage with Thunder in Your Heart playing and him doing some BMX stuff. It's pretty cool. And then he goes back to his man cave. This kid has a man cave, and it's a pretty awesome fucking man cave.
Yeah.
It's basically an underground vault, and it's just decorated from wall to wall with relics of the past. He collects pink flamingos. He has a poster of like a beach with flamingos on it that says "Welcome to Paradise." He has a whole bunch of memorabilia from some character named Turbo Man? Or
Turbo Man.
Turbo Man. No, the Turbo Rider.
Yeah, Turbo Rider.
So there's a character that has a comic book that he's really into, and he really seems to have latched onto this character as like a hero or a like a aspirational father figure of some sort. Anyway, this kid has a super awesome lair, and then he has this alarm system that's set up on like a wire that feeds back into his vault, and it starts jingling and jangling, and so he goes out, and there's a little rat creature in a cage.
Do you know what it looks like?
And that's why I said put a pin in it. It looks like the rat monkey from Dead Alive.
It's I looked for it on the IMDb. I'm like, it has to be the same thing because it looks exactly like it. But I couldn't find anything.
It looks very, very similar to Peter Jackson's rat monkey that was stop motion animated for the most part. But yeah, it's a little puppet creature that I guess his alarm was like a cage. It was like a trap. Snare for animals.
I want to go with my gut, and I want to say because this is a co-production, Canada and New Zealand, and one of the main characters in this is actually a Kiwi. I think that's a tip of. I think that's like a tip of the hat to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I think that's that tone that you were talking about, that horror comedy feel.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the filmmakers pointing out to the audience that, hey, if you're familiar with this, if you get the reference. Strap in because you're gonna get some stuff like that.
I think I wasn't dreading watching this movie, but I just wasn't really super excited. And then I saw that Sumerian monkey rap.
Sumatran. Yeah.
And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, okay, you've got me. That's such a neat little thing to throw in there. Like this should be
it's
fun.
a little detail that, like, if you get it, cool. If you don't, whatever.
No.
But I took it to heart as an example of them saying, hey, we've seen Peter Jackson's movies. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's a New Zealand co-production, so I'm sure at least somebody in his crew worked on this movie.
If you've studied,
I don't imagine their film
Zealand,
industry is that big.
If you studied film in New Zealand, Peter Jackson's come up.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, he grabs this rat from the cage and it like scratches him on the face. It's kind of a nothing little detail, but yeah, it puts like some Wolverine scratches on his face. But then he like goes to, I guess, the town or the settlement nearby. I forget if it has a name, but I think the intention was he trying to sell the rat?
I think so. I think that was supposed to be food.
Yeah. So he goes into this shady looking bar area, and there's a gentleman in here, like the bartender, the barkeep, who he tries to sell this this dead mutant rat to in exchange for water. Oh yeah, and a comic book, a Turbo Rider comic book. And you can tell that like the water, he's like, I do need that to live, but he seems more interested in the comic book. And during this scene, it has kind of like a Mos Eisley feel to it, or
very
like
much.
What's the town from Beyond Thunderdome? It's like Bartertown, I think. It definitely has a Mad Max feel to it.
Yeah.
Like it needs to be said that the costuming and the production design of this movie is cheap for sure.
Yeah.
But it actually lends a charm to it, and the costuming definitely had some love put into it. And there's one character in here who shows up later in the movie as a minor antagonist. That the costume for them made me kind of like do a double take because there's a manga and an anime called Sunabozu, Desert Punk, basically. That's the English title of the series. If you look that up, the character design is eerily similar. It's the character with the straw brimmed cap and the gas mask.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They don't do anything here. They just kind of like bump shoulders with him and give each other dirty looks. But in the background, though, there is a arm wrestling match going on
between Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom guy.
Yeah, no joke.
That's what he looks like. Because the one dude's...
yeah, no joke.
The Kiwi, the guy in here, the guy from New Zealand, he's dressed like Indiana Jones, like on the nose. Actually, he looks more like the guy... Was it... he's like, you lost today, kid, but you don't have to like it.
The guy who Indiana Jones basically borrowed his shtick from.
Yeah.
From Last Crusade.
And he's having an arm wrestling match with this guy who looked like the guy from Temple of Doom who heart rips people. I don't think that was on...
He looked like Molaram. Because he had like the bone headdress and stuff.
Yeah, I don't think that was on accident either.
No, I don't think so. And the way they do their arm wrestling, though, is there's a branding iron placed on, I think, either side of their forearms. So the loser gets branded, basically. And Cowboy Indiana Jones man defeats Molaram. And at first it looks like Molaram's going to throw down with him and try to kill him. But just with the sheer power of his badassness, Cowboy Kiwi man manages to talk him down, and they end up being buddy.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the kid bumps into Cowboy Kiwi.
Yeah, he does.
On his way out. There's a really goofy exchange here. So the way Cowboy Kiwi is presented to us, and this guy's like 6'4", 6'5", or something. He towers over almost everyone in this movie. He's presented to us as like the supreme badass in every sense.
Yeah.
Like he is all that is man. So like there's an air of reverence around him. Like everybody kind of like defers to him when it comes to decision making and stuff like that. So on the way out of the bar or whatever, the kid like bumps into him, and we get this goofy exchange where Cowboy Kiwi is like, whoa, personal bubble.
Yeah, I do like the personal bubble. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, and he like explains to him the concept of a personal bubble. How it's like keep within arm's distance, otherwise it's like uncomfortable. It's like, what he says like anything within arm's distance is like only for like ladies and family or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just worded really strangely, and I thought they were building up to a theme here where it'd be like he and the kid would share some sort of relationship in that like both of them learned everything they know about the world through like comic books and relics of the past. So like the story I imagined for Cowboy Kiwi was that all of his isms, like all of his words of wisdom and stuff, came from like those stingers at the end of G.I. Joe episodes.
Okay. That would have been funny.
It's like all this like insight and wisdom he supposedly has just comes from like watching 80s cartoons.
That would be an interesting twist on it. That'd be kind of funny.
That's what I was writing in my head. It didn't come to pass, but I thought it would have been hilarious.
So he ends up getting captured by Zeus's people, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so what happens is Cowboy Kiwi, after the personal bubble exchange, one of his boys rolls up on him. And this is where it starts to become evident that the vehicle of choice in this world are bicycles.
Yes.
Everybody rides bikes. So it's not like Mad Max, where gasoline is like a precious resource and we still have cars. It seems like cars just don't work anymore.
No.
So every time you see anyone rolling out, to do whatever in this movie, they're riding a bike. And it never stops being funny. To me, it just made me chuckle to see, like, Cowboy Kiwi, this big, badass cowboy man, riding, like, a little bike. So, yeah, one of his boys rolls up on him and he says, oh, hey, the bad guys got your brother. And he's like, son of a bitch!
Yeah.
And they ride off together on their bikes. And then I think we cut to our introduction of Zeus.
I think we meet Hannah first before we meet Zeus.
Hannah?
The girl.
Apple.
Oh, Hannah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Her name's Apple.
I'll tell you why I thought Hannah after this. I can't.
Do you know a Hannah who is like an apple?
I knew a girl named Hannah Apple.
Oh, okay.
Her
name is Apple.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Apple.
I'm not sure who gets introduced first. I think in my notes I have. Okay, let's introduce Apple.
Yeah, she's less fun to talk about than Zeus, in my opinion. Turbo Kid is hanging out on a swing set reading his comic book, and it's kind of like on the outskirts of the town, kind of near where his bunker is, basically. And he's just kind of sitting there, and then a girl just pops up on the swing next to him, and she's got crazy eyes. They're just glued open, and she's really smiley and really nice, and he's kind of reluctant, like if you would be in this kind of landscape, you're like, someone's about to hit me over the head because I've never seen you before, and I have a feeling you're the last thing I'm going to see. But she wants to go hang out with him, basically, so she goes behind the corner to say goodbye to somebody else. And come to find out that the person she's saying goodbye to is a dead person. So he's just red flags all over the place. He's like, I don't know about this chick. But yeah, I think he storms back off to his bunker because he's freaked out by her.
Yeah, and it's evident that
I'm sorry,
this kid.
The wrist thing, that's important.
So when she rolls up on him, she asks him, "Do you want to be friends?" Yeah. And he's kind of caught off guard. I don't even think he gives a valid response. He's just like, "Duh," and she has one of those slap like Swatch watch things.
Yeah.
That the prop's very cheap looking, but it's a blue doohickey that she slaps onto his wrist and has a light bulb on it. It's just kind of blinking, and he takes off running. It's funny actually, when I was writing notes as I was watching this movie, and whenever we do these catching up on cinema episodes, I make it a point to not read up on them beforehand. Sometimes I'll do that after. In this case, I did. But while I was watching it, I wrote, Apple comes across as ... very Canadian. And I didn't know this was a Canadian film ahead of time, but just her demeanor, I was like, she seems a little Quebecois.
It's funny, I was actually, my favorite beer in the whole wide world is La Fin du Monde, which is from the Unibrow. It's not pronounced like that. It's some French pronunciation. It's a brewery from Quebec. It's my favorite beer, and I usually drink it when I watch these movies because it's just the right amount of alcohol and the right amount of beer that I can still focus on what I'm doing and take notes. But it's a Quebec beer, and I looked up the production. I'm like, well, how about that? It's a
funny.
And
yeah,
I actually
her demeanor is like super perky and just like overly friendly, and it just came across as very Canadian to me.
Yeah. So yeah, he's wearing this little wristwatch, and he goes back to his little bunker, and then she shows up. She's just like, "Oh yeah, I was able to track you because of the watch. There's some kind of tracking device in the watch."
He's like, "Can I take it off?" And she's like, "No." It's like, you can't do that.
So yeah, we're introduced to her. I'm not sure. Not too much happens right here. Then
it's important to note that she has like a childlike wonder quality to her. Like she's like Kyle mentioned, her eyes are just like stapled open. Like she's bright-eyed and just like bushy-tailed 24/7. And as she's touring his lair, she's like messing with stuff. And she's picking it up and like turning things upside down, and like you can tell it's agitating him. And it becomes evident that he's probably been alone for a long time.
Yes.
And you can tell he's not used to accommodating guests, let alone people who are messing with his stuff. And he's definitely uneasy around her, but at the same time, he's not like screaming at her to get out.
He's probably very intimidated by her because he's in the developing years, and he hasn't probably had a lot of social interaction with people his age in a healthy environment. So I would say like this is going to be probably pretty awkward because this is an awkward phase, and she's a very cute girl. Like she's definitely right up his alley. So he's probably like he really doesn't know what to do with this. Like she's like really nice, and like I didn't get hit over the head yet, so like she just.
Well, I'm sure there's that element of him waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
In this world, it's very clear. I mean, they arm wrestle with fucking branding irons.
I mean, they seem to be in a fairly safe area, but it feels kind of like the Waterworld. Like that's where I was it's kind of mixed with Waterworld because in Mad Max, nobody's safe at all. At least in Waterworld, there's a little bit of a camaraderie. Like you can see that they're trying to work together, and I get more of that sense from this place.
Yeah, but it's still the apocalypse, and resources are scarce, and it stands to reason that he'd be a little cautious about overly friendly people.
So yeah, do you want to introduce Zeus?
So sometime around here is when we are introduced to Zeus, the antagonist of the film, played by my boy Michael Ironside, the angriest Canadian on the planet. Yeah. I really love Michael Ironside.
I thought it was Brendan Gleeson from the cover because he looks like Mad Eye Moody because of how like Michael Ironside's he's older and he's a little fatter, so
yeah, he's put on some weight, Kyle. It happens.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm just saying, like, it didn't look like him. It looked like Brendan Gleeson on the front cover, so that's who I was expecting. So when he shows up, I'm like, oh shit, that's Michael Ironside. I didn't even realize he was in this movie. So of course I perked up as well.
If you're not familiar with Michael Ironside, he's been a very prolific voice actor in the past few years. He played Sam Fisher in the Splinter Cell games. He played Darkseid in the DC animated universe. That was how a lot of kids were introduced to him. But he was in a lot of 80s movies, mostly as antagonists. Richter from Total Recall.
He is George Clooney's boss in one of my favorite movies, A Perfect Storm. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's right.
He's
small role,
fish.
I really enjoyed him in Top Gun as Jester? Yeah, he was Jester. He plays a good hard ass. Yeah. He plays a really good hard ass. Anyway, enough gushing.
Yeah.
So we're introduced to Zeus, and as we had mentioned earlier, Cowboy Kiwi, his brother's been abducted by the bad guys, and Zeus has some sort of like swimming pool arena. Looks very similar to the arrangement in the Jet Li movie Unleashed, or Danny the Dog if you're from overseas. There's a swimming pool fight in that movie. No. Anyway, the brother in this movie, I actually wrote a note here. Sam Worthington? ? I thought it was him for a second.
Yeah, I didn't really take much notice of him because I knew he wasn't going to make it much longer.
Yeah, it's just some burly looking guy with a greasy mullet.
Yeah.
And anyway, Zeus has a big speech. You can tell that he is a faction leader of some sort. Like he's got some soldiers under him.
Yeah.
And apparently this gentleman, Cowboy Kiwi's brother, just finished fighting some dudes and did well, but is pretty much on his last legs at this point. And if I remember right, he gets his head smashed in with a sledgehammer.
I do believe
made of a cinder block.
Well, this is always fun in movies. We kind of tease the violence a little bit. At the beginning, you see the heads on the pikes, which is pretty good. You're like, okay, this is the kind of movie we're talking about. And here, I think the death is off screen, like we don't see it, but we kind of see some of the blood. So you don't really know what you're in for yet, because there's much more violence in this movie.
This is also when we're introduced to Skullman, I think.
Yes, Skullman is a big part of this movie.
The Wes of the movie, if you get the reference. Wes being Vernon Wells from The Road Warrior.
Okay.
Minus the homoeroticism.
Is he the dude with the mohawk? Like this?
Yes.
Yeah. He is. He's an Australian actor. He is in
Vernon Wells.
a really fun Cheech Marin movie from the 80s called Shrimp on the Barbie. It was an Australian production, and Cheech Marin, it's a really funny movie, but it's one of those, like, I need you to act like my new fiance or my new boyfriend so that my parents will accept my older boyfriend, and the older boyfriend is him. And it's a lot of fun. It's a fun movie. I think it probably holds up. I haven't seen it in a long time, but...
Funny. Last time I saw him, I think, was he was in one of the Power Rangers shows.
No shit. Oh, he was in Weird Science, also playing, I think, his exact same character from The Road Warrior.
Gotcha.
There's like a gag.
We'll be calling this character Skullman because I don't think he has a name, but he has a very distinctive look. And as I said, he's basically the right-hand man to the villain of the movie, Zeus.
He's not that menacing, which is the thing. Like, I didn't find him that menacing. I know he's supposed to be, but his mask just made him seem more comedic to me. I don't know about you, but
yeah. Well, I don't think there is an element of menace to this movie.
Yeah,
it's very. I think it's important to note that the protagonists of this story are basically supposed to be teenagers, and it has that cutesy kind of feel to it at times, even though it's intensely violent.
I was trying to figure out how old this guy was.
The kid?
the skull face guy. I'm like, is he carries himself like a young guy, but when he, spoiler alert, eventually gets his, and you get close to him, I'm like, I think he was like well into his 30s. Like he was a much older guy.
He had a pretty thick beard stubble going on under that mask.
Yeah.
So he was very much a man.
He was a man. So we don't know why he kills the brother, and they throw him into this big meat grinder, and we don't really know what it is. We just know it's like a big grinder. And I think this is where he has the kiwi, and I think his hand's been cut off at this point. They had
not yet, not quite yet.
Okay.
So shortly after this, Cowboy Kiwi is hanging out with his dudes, and they're looking for his brother, who they don't know is dead.
Yes.
And Cowboy Kiwi steps off to have a piss, and one of his cohorts just like stands next to him and starts peeing, and you can tell the personal bubble thing, like the spiel is about to bubble up to the surface again. He's like, I have something to say about what you're doing right now. But then from behind, Skullman and a couple of other baddies roll up on them and do a number on Cowboy Kiwi's team, and then abduct him.
Yes.
So apparently Zeus doesn't like Cowboy Kiwi.
No.
And then this is, I think, when we cut back to the kid and Apple, and he's decided to keep her around. Like, I think he just doesn't have it in him to tell her off.
Well, he's wanting to like drive off. Like he's wanting to take his bike away, and she's like, "Can I come with you?" And he's like, "I don't have any way for you to come." And she looks down into his bag, and she sees the 2 pegs that you put on the back of bikes, and she's like looks at him and like she knows what that means. Like, I can ride on the back. So he's reluctant. He's like, "Fuck, I gotta take her with me."
Yeah. Speaking of, can I come with you? Have you ever seen Screamers?
No, I have not.
I might ask you to watch that at some point.
Okay.
That's another post-apocalyptic sci-fi movie. Okay. Peter Weller. I like him. But yeah, Can I Come With You always brings to mind that movie. And I happen to like it.
All right. I'll write it down.
But yeah, when they're riding along, she's like hugging him from behind, and you can tell he's got some mixed feelings about that. Probably has to hide a boner or something.
Yeah, there's a little bit of boner hiding happening, I believe.
Yeah. But yeah, as they're adventuring together, he starts rattling off rules of the wasteland. And again, I don't know if he came up with these rules or if the Turbo Rider comic had them or something, but I actually wrote them down. Rule 1 is always have water. Always have your wheels handy. Stay in the safe zone, at which point he pulls out his little crayon map to show her, stay outside the zone. And I like how the map is completely oriented from his perspective. So if anyone picked up this map besides him, they would have no fucking clue.
Yeah, they'd have no idea.
Oriented in relation to whatever. I don't remember exactly how he phrased it, but he says avoid evil people. No hugging while riding. Always carry a weapon. And if you don't have one, make one. And this is when he makes her a weapon with duct tape, which duct tape plays a very big role in this movie.
I just remember that like they really missed an opportunity to get a song in here by Kiss. God of Thunder. I think it's sang by Gene Simmons. Are you familiar with that one?
Not that one in particular, no. Now, I'm gonna have to look it up after though.
But he mentions "I am Lord of the Wasteland." I'm like, ooh, that would have been good. This would have been kind of cool song for one of these post-apocalyptic movies. Nobody's taken advantage of it, but also I think that it probably costs $1 billion to license one of Kiss's songs.
I'm sure they're quite litigious.
Yes, that's what I've heard.
But yeah, they make a weapon for Apple, and it's I think a baseball bat with a garden gnome attached, like duct taped to the end of it, to the fat end of it. And she like is over the moon about this. Like she is so pleased to have her gnome stick, as she calls it.
Yeah.
And she takes a few practice swings, and she's just ecstatic. And he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah. Somebody asked at one point, like, "Is that a leprechaun on there or something?" They ask, "What is that?"
So the kid and Apple are adventuring together, and then out of nowhere, someone abducts her. Like just someone snatches her. and the kid chases after him, and they're on a bike, and they have a little bike chase. And this is actually a weird part of the movie, because I thought it was going to turn into like some dream sequence bullshit or something, like layered reality or something. So like he's chasing after, and it's actually the Tsunabozu, the guy with the straw cap and the gas mask from the bar earlier. They're involved in the abduction, and the kid chases after him and falls into a hole just in the middle of the ground. It's like a trap door, and things start to happen very quickly here, where it's like it felt like a dream or something. Like he falls and hits his head or something. But yeah, he falls and he wakes up inside of a spaceship with one of those plasma globes. It's that purple electrical ball that if you touch it, like the streams of electricity gravitate to your fingertips. Fun use of a prop, very 80s sci-fi, because it's very clearly just a plasma globe, but you're supposed to use your imagination. So by touching this globe, it like turns on all the lights inside the ship, and there's a repeating video message on a very early 80s television monitor embedded in the cockpit of the ship that's like repeating a message to the turbo rider, who is like mummified in the cockpit of the ship. So apparently Turbo Rider's a real person.
Yes, because he finds his gear. He finds the Turbo Rider gear first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's confirmed that Turbo Rider, these comics were based on a real person. So if I remember right, we get a couple of excerpts from the comics, just like reading them over the shoulder of the kid, like as he's reading them aloud to himself.
Yeah.
And funny little note, like right before Apple sneaks up on him, the panel he's looking at in the comic is actually torn. So he's like not sure what it was Turbo Rider said at that moment. And you can tell it irritates him. But from what I gleaned from the couple instances we got of information regarding the comics, was Turbo Rider was fighting robots. There was some sort of robot army that Turbo Rider was enlisted to do battle with. So in this spaceship, the kid finds the Turbo Rider, the Turbo Man uniform, and just puts it on. It has some sort of wrist blaster, just like the character in the comic, and he comes out of the ground, and kind of randomly, Tsunabozu rolls up on him again, and they have a bit of a showdown, and Tsunabozu has like a rocket fist on a chain, just because. And the kid just instinctively points the wrist blaster at him and blows the holy hell out of him. I mean, he turns him into pieces. Red mist. Yeah, he turns him into chunky salsa.
Do you remember in Tropic Thunder when Steve Coogan takes them all up into the mountains and he takes all their phones away and he's just like, all right, now let's go make a movie, and he turns around and he steps on that mine and he just goes just into pieces.
Yeah, no, I remember.
That's pretty much what happens.
It's right up there with that. And I really love the way they did the wrist blaster effects in this movie. Because I don't know, it may have been CGI, but I think it was just heavily doctored rotoscoping. Like, I think it may have been actual like hand-drawn animation.
Oh, okay.
Because it looks like it, but it's doctored with modern technology.
Yeah.
But it has a beautiful look to it that I really liked, and we get the poster moment where right after he blows up Tsunabozu, he just like kind of does a fist pump into the air, and we get a Voltron, bling! And the sound effect is like straight out of like Voltron or like He-Man or something. It's pretty great.
I think he's going to go save her. She's been captured, but he's going to go save her.
Yes, he's going to go save her, and so he rolls up on Zeus's fortress, which, if I'm going to be 100% honest, the composite shot, that kind of reminded me of, again, He-Man, actually. Whenever they would show, like, Castle Grayskull, or, like, same with, like, Thundercats. Whenever they'd show Mum Ra's lair, there would always be this, or the Super Friends, whenever they'd show, like, Lex Luthor's lair in the swamp. They had this, like, stock shot that they'd keep going to of, like, an exterior, like, an establishing shot. They kept doing that with Zeus's lair. And if I'm going to be 100% honest, the compositing on that shot is probably the worst in the whole movie. And it was a little annoying that they kept cutting back to it. Because the compositing is actually very good in this movie. except that one shot.
Just that one.
And it shows up like 3 or 4 times.
So before they got to the pool, Michael Ironside ends up having the Kiwi Cowboy do an arm wrestling thing over a blender. But instead of doing that, he pulls the guy he's arm wrestling into the blender onto his eye, and he tries to escape, but he ends up losing his hand. So he's in the pool, empty pool, with Apple, and I think the Turbo Kid tries to actually use his weapon right away. Like, he somehow gets into the pool, like maybe he gets knocked out and thrown into the pool. I'm not entirely sure how he gets in there, but he thinks he's got this awesome weapon, and he's like, "We're not going to do shit," and he tries to shoot it at him. Well, Michael Ironside shows them how his little machine works. There's the meat grinder, basically. Well, what he does is he throws an entire body into the meat grinder, and through some kind of science and magic, it produces water. And I think one body gives you like a shot of water, or was that just from the hand that he was able to get the water?
I think it's like a substantial amount. I guess it's not just that. That would be horrific.
Yeah.
Like, if it takes a whole body to get like one shot of water. So basically, if you've ever seen Tank Girl, it's the same concept, just grittier.
Gotcha.
Malcolm McDowell has a machine in Tank Girl that takes all the fluids out of people's bodies and turns them into water. This one grinds them.
I had a pretty good laugh at that. But
I had a pretty good laugh at his line. Let the juicing begin.
Let the juicing begin. Yes, I had some legit laughs in this. That was definitely one of them.
Let the juicing begin.
Let the juicing begin.
Delivered with his voice. That's fucking awesome.
Only by him. That's why it works.
Yeah. Also, blades and fire.
There's something interesting that Michael Ironside does in this movie. His character has a cane, which is a golf club. And yes. I made a joke, Michael Ironside using a 9-iron at his side for a cane. Because he's using just like a wedge, some kind of iron club as his cane. I just thought, Ironside. Go ahead.
That's especially cute.
Ironside.
That's funny, actually. My note here says, I love that Ironside has a golf club instead of a scepter or a riding crop. And then immediately below that, what do you know? The golf club came in handy. The golf club's important to the story. I was kind of surprised that it's a small prop. It's something that not everybody would notice, but it actually has significance to the story. So after this is when like the gore element of this movie, the Dead Alive stuff, starts to enter into the picture. So we have a showdown in the pool, and it's Turbo Kid, Apple, Cowboy Kiwi, one-handed Cowboy Kiwi, and some random guy who has a pretty satisfying death.
Yeah.
Cowboy Kiwi directs traffic here. He gets everyone in a power huddle. He's like, okay, like, I'll take the big fucker, you take the little fucker.
He explains why too. It's funny.
And the extra guy, he's basically in Star Trek parlance the red shirt of the group. He like makes a run straight at one of the bad guys and trips and drives a knife like into his own eye. I think. Yeah. It's pretty great. It's important to note the costuming of these pool gladiators. We have one guy wearing a hockey mask, Jason Voorhees. We have another guy wearing a bag on his head, Jason Voorhees. Plus he has a butcher's apron, Leatherface. There's a lot of like small visual references here that are pretty great.
Well, I actually named the main side bad guy, the one with the mask. I nicknamed him Jason Dickhees because he's just a dick, and he's kind of like a Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, he is kind of a dick.
Yeah.
I called him Skullman. Oh yeah. Also, one of the guys in the pool has a glaive, and even the way it's shot is basically like the Kroll glaive. If you've ever seen that, that's basically a giant throwing star that it's like a boomerang at the same time. But yeah, we got some juicy kills in this sequence. Like very, very creative gore. Definitely brings to mind like Dead Alive. I really loved when the top of the guy's head spun around. It gets like slashed across the eyes.
And then
tasty stuff.
it was really good. I actually wrote down like the pool scene is great. It's a lot of fun. He ends up realizing that his Turbo Kid realizes that his turbo blaster is not it has to charge. So when he tries to like I'm gonna bust this all out of here, it doesn't work. But then he finally gets it to work, and he just like I said, just obliterates one of these people. And the skull mask guy, his look like he just like his like a quick like. Holy shit. He doesn't say anything, but and like they're all just like what the fuck, but I think he tries to shoot again and it doesn't work or something, but Michael Ironside ends up
it has a charge on it.
He ends up shooting Apple, and it looks like it's a pretty critical shot, so you're like shit, he shot her, but I think she's able to like get out of there with them, and like even the Kiwis is like, you guys might want to get the fuck out of here, like we should probably go.
They blow up the grinder. That's how they escape.
Mm-hmm.
As the grinder explodes, and during all the chaos, Cowboy Kiwi like opens the gate that leads to a staircase out of the pool, and they all go their separate ways.
So after this, they go their separate ways, and I don't know where we go from here.
This is when we get a ticking clock. So Cowboy Kiwi just kind of leaves the story for now.
Yeah.
However, Turbo Kid and Apple take off, and when they're walking along, she has like a seizure of sorts. Like she shuts down for a moment. By the way, this is when we learn she's a robot.
A cyborg. She's a fucking cyborg.
So she got shot square in the chest.
Yeah.
And when Turbo Kid finally comes to his senses and realizes, this woman with a hole in her chest is talking and walking just fine, he examines the bullet hole in her, and there's like circuits in there and stuff, and like blue blood or something. And he's like, oh shit, you're a robot. And you can tell that he's a little uneasy about that.
Yeah.
Especially since he spends a lot of time reading comic books about a hero who fought robots. And a little later, that's when she has her shutdown moment, and it's revealed that she has these little 8-bit Zelda hearts on the inside of her forearm that represent like her power level, and it's draining, most likely as a result of having been shot. And she tells him that if I run out of hearts, I shut down forever. He's like, you mean die? She's like, yeah, pretty much. And you can tell, even though she's super perky all the time, the concept of being shut down forever does in fact resonate with her.
Yeah.
Like she does understand what it means to no longer be alive. So that sets them on sets them out on an adventure to find a new like power source for her, because she knows what they need, but they don't know how to find it. So if I remember right, Turbo Kid goes to track down the bartender that he sold the rat to early in the movie, the person he exchanged the rat for water, and he finds him on the road with a wagon full of shit.
He's leaving town.
He is skipping town, because apparently Zeus was not happy that some of his guys got killed and his meat grinder machine got blowed up. So he's on the warpath looking for the kid and Apple and Cowboy Kiwi. And Turbo Kid, at first the trader guy doesn't want to deal with him. Like he's like, Zeus is gonna kill me if I so much as talk to you.
Yeah.
But you can tell from like all the shit in his wagon that he's a bit of a hoarder. He likes his shinies, and Apple gives him her headband. Her very 80s aerobics headband.
Felt like it reminded me of the Labyrinth a little bit. Like she gets Hoggle to help take her to the Goblin City, and she gets him with like a little bracelet.
Yeah, very much so. And he, in exchange for the headband with some sparklies on it, he points them in the direction to a robot cemetery, and he like whispers this to Turbo Kid because he's, I don't know, sensitive enough to know that maybe the robot girl doesn't want to hear that.
Yeah.
And yeah, they take off to go there, and if I remember right, this is when they have their night together. They find a shelter that's near the robot cemetery, and her hearts are running really low, and they have a sweet little interaction here They're burning VHS tapes to stay warm, by the way. And in the background, there's a bunch of like burned out arcade cabinets, and they get very close to making out here. But she barfs not SpaghettiOs, but like dinosaur SpaghettiOs on him.
Well, yeah, because she eats something, and he's like, "But you're a cyborg." She's like, "Well, I've been programmed to look like you and even like eat, so it makes you more comfortable." And I think that's a line from, oh man, I want to say it's from like Alien or something.
I haven't seen it since it was like on TBS or like UPN when I was a little kid. But there was this movie called Cherry 2000. It's about like a love android. Mm-hmm. It's like a lady robot that you can buy, and it has that post-apocalyptic vibe to it. I feel like a lot of her arc, if I remember right, feels kind of similar to that. She's programmed to be a friend. Like if I remember right, that's what
she's.
Her
she is a friendly droid because someone even mentions it later that she's a friendly.
She's a companion basically.
Yeah.
She barfs on him right before he makes out with her, and then she changes the subject, or he does, and they start talking about fighting. He was like, "Yeah, you really know how to handle your gnome stick." And she's like, "I do." And like, "You want me to teach you how?"
Well, yeah. And
so they step away from the fire, and if I remember right, there's a Karate Kid quote in here. Was it "Strike first, strike hard, show no mercy"?
Something like
the
that.
Cobra Kai. Yeah, she tells him that. That's her words of wisdom.
That makes sense.
And she does the balls, the throat, and the eyes, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah, she shows him some like rudimentary self-defense technique. So she kicks him in the balls, like jabs him in the throat, and pokes him in the eyes.
I get hazy through this section. I kind of only remember picking up where they have the showdown after they kill the guy with the wagon, like the guy leaving town.
Oh yeah, there's a couple of scenes interspersed here. So it needs to be said that interspersed throughout the movie, maybe 3 different instances. Pretty much anytime the kid is unconscious, there's a recurring dream that's revealed to us in snippets. It's him as a child with his family, and some bad people roll up on him. Mm-hmm. I think by this point in the film, we've cut back to it twice, and we still don't have an idea of why this is important, but we keep cutting back to it. So put a pin in that, I guess. But yeah, the bartender guy gets it real bad.
Yeah.
You want to go into what happens to him?
I mean, I was gonna keep moving forward. I was just gonna mention him past.
we can gloss over that. It's a small detail. But long story short, bartender gets abducted by Zeus's goons. The headband gives away the fact that he's had contact with them, and he's not around anymore.
Yeah. He's done.
He's not coming down for breakfast.
We get a this would made me think of Stranger Things again, is because like a Stephen King movie, there's a rock quarry that comes up in this movie. I think there's one in It too, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but it's definitely comes up in Stranger Things, a rock quarry or like a cliff that used to be a quarry, because I think that's where we kind of go to from here. I think that's where we have a little bit of a showdown with the Skull Mask guy and his goons.
We have, there's a chase sequence, and so this would be immediately following the night they had together. When they wake up, Skullman is there. So Skullman has taken the information imparted to him from the bartender and tracked them down. They have another bike chase. They're scooting along, and they come to the end of the road, and there's like a toxic pit. It's just toxic fumes everywhere, and dinosaur statues for some reason. And what happens is Skullman, I think, decapitates Apple with his buzzsaw gun.
He's just a dick.
Yeah, he's such a dick. And I kind of like his physical acting. Like, he has a little like head twitch he does that's kind of neat. Like he's got this frizzy hair that like jitters around, so he's kind of twitchy. Yeah. But yeah, he decapitates Apple, and Turbo Kid is freaking out, so he jumps after the head into the toxic pit, and we get this kind of. If I was a kid, this movie isn't for kids, but
No.
like I could totally. This is kind of like the Swamp of Sadness or whatever from Never-Ending Story. It's kind of like that. So like Turbo Kid's like walking through this toxic environment. He's like shuffling along. You can tell he's like hacking and coughing and dying in here. And he's got Apple's head cradled under his arm. This is the all is lost moment. And as it so happens, this is like the robot graveyard, the cemetery, or whatever. So he comes to a pile of bodies and attaches her head to one of the lady robot bodies and duct tapes it. And then passes out very shortly after. He passes out, and we get the completion of that dream sequence I had mentioned. As it so happens, Michael Ironside, Zeus, was the one who was the looming presence in his dream.
Yeah.
So it's revealed that Michael Ironside killed the kid's parents for no real reason. Skullman was there.
They had a water source. They had a huge barrel of water, and he's like, "Well, where did you get this? This is my land. If you take it from my land, it's mine." Which led me to believe, like, that made me think they had some kind of water purification system or some kind of they knew someplace that there was fresh water, but that didn't really come up.
No.
He just happened to have a barrel of water. But yeah, Michael Ironside kills them, and his mom is actually the one. She has a crossbow or some kind of...
Yeah, I actually had a note here. How the fuck did she get to the crossbow?
Get to the crossbow!
No, she's at one end of the frame. She gets punched in the face, I think, by Skullman. Yeah. And then she teleports to the other side, like behind them, with a crossbow.
Yeah, and then she shoots Michael Ironside in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we learn that that's how he lost his eye. He only has one eye, by the way. We didn't mention that.
Yeah, we've neglected to mention that.
Yeah.
Michael Ironside's character has an eye patch that looks like it's made of a sheriff's badge or something.
Yeah, and he doesn't know that the kid is the kid that he let go. He basically, the Skullface guy was going to kill him or do something to him. He's like, nah, he won't last out there. Just let him go. So we learned that he's been on his own since he was about 8. So he's been alone for about 8 years, I'd say. This kid's about 16 or 17.
Yeah. Which explains why he's maybe a little cagey around Apple. And also that golf club is what is ultimately used to murder his mother.
Correct. But yeah. So he leaves her behind in the robot graveyard, and
he wakes up in the custody of Cowboy Kiwi.
Yeah.
Who has a bicycle wagon with a giant bomb in the wagon, and the kid wakes up and he sees Cowboy Kiwi just like pulling him along.
Doesn't he seem like a New Zealand version of Treat Williams a little bit? He just seems really nice and affable, but like kind of a dick a little bit. Like, he's not a mean guy. He steps up when he has to, but I don't know.
I think the New Zealand aspect of that's important to know.
Yeah.
he's a little hardier, a little more gruff.
Yeah.
But yeah, he kind of has that vibe. It's like, if there's a lady in the room, he'll be a complete gentleman.
Yeah.
Watch the swears, boy.
So where do we go from here? I'm getting hazy because I watched this a few days ago. I stopped taking notes at this point because I was just into the movie. So I don't remember.
I think this brings us right up to the final battle.
All right, let's talk about the final battle.
First note I have here: body hats are hilarious.
I have written down. I said a fucking cyborg when we find out that she's a robot, and then I didn't have a note until I said Jason Dickies, Skullface guy. I said his death is great.
It's pretty good. So you mentioned a quarry.
Mm-hmm.
The finale of this movie takes place in a quarry. So basically Turbo Kid and Cowboy Kiwi roll out to this quarry, and I guess Zeus just knew where they were going to be because he's just there.
Yeah.
And like Skullman is there too, and most of most of Zeus's goons show up too. So I guess it's kind of like Green Street Hooligans that we just talked about. It's just like maybe it was prearranged that this battle would happen here. I don't know.
Possibly.
Anyway, despite being horribly outnumbered, our two heroes just decide to step up and fight. They, like I said, Cowboy Kiwi brought a big bomb with him that the kid identifies as like some sort of Turbo Rider associated weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, like that theory I had about the Cowboy Kiwi having like some sort of connection to the kid through like comic books or like shared pop culture knowledge or something lends a little bit of credence to that, because when the kid says the name of the weapon, Cowboy Kiwi's like, yeah, you know your stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just known that this particular bomb is that. So I guess that's their trump card in this fight. And yeah, one note I had for this whole big fight was music during the big fight is maybe a skosh more energetic than the choreography and the editing. It needs to be said that the synth music in this movie, the synth wave music in particular, it's a very specific genre. It has a very specific sound. Is ever present throughout this movie. Like there's hardly a scene where it isn't pulsing in the background. And this scene, like the music was going nuts, while actual movements and like artistry of the fighting was, I felt maybe not on the same energy level. It's still horribly entertaining because it's incredibly violent.
Yeah, it is very violent.
But you need to view it as like a collection of like whimsical special effects shots rather than fighting, because it doesn't have the feel of a fight. It's very static. Like the energy level is not really there. Like even Cowboy Kiwi doesn't really move with much purpose. He just kind of stands there and people run into his fists. By the way, he has a robot fist now. He replaced his hand. I
noticed that they didn't give it like a fist bump at one point, and he's got a different hand on. So the final battle, Turbo Boy is basically murking these other fellas, but he comes down to the showdown between him and Zeus, and I think he might like injure him. I think he like shoots him in the chest or something.
So it's important to note here that during the fight, by the way, the reference I had to body hats, more than a couple of people are torn in half during this fight, and they like get stacked on top of each other like a totem pole.
Yes.
And it's pretty fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
I think the opening hit of this fight is the kid paying homage to what Apple taught him, and like taking out a dude's nuts, slitting their throat and slashing them across the eyes in rapid succession. It's pretty fucking great. There's a lot of good kills in this fight. Also the lady friend of Michael Ironside.
I forgot about her.
She's fine. Quite fine.
Yeah.
Her hair looked like Rufio from Hook.
Yeah.
And the breastplate she had, the golden breastplate, it looked like it was stolen like from the studio, like off the set of Gladiator. You know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
Like the chariot fight?
Yes. I know
like
you're talking
the first
about.
one at the Coliseum. Yeah, it looked very similar to that. But she gets some fighting moves in there, and it's during her exchange with Turbo Kid that Apple shows up. So Apple shows up to save the day. As it so happens, her head being tied onto that body worked out. And another important detail is when Turbo Kid fell into that toxic pit with Apple's head in tow, he dropped his wrist blaster, the turbo blaster thing, and he gave no fucks about that. He was more concerned with her. But when she shows up at the quarry, she brought it with her. So he puts it on, and the remainder of the bad guys get blowed the fuck up with the turbo blaster.
Yes.
So she like shows up for like the turn the tide moment. Because that lady was whipping his ass. But yeah, right after this though, Michael Ironside decides to enter the fray, and he has a handgun. Everybody's been fighting with melee weapons up to this point, including a hammer glaive that the kid and this other bad guy both had, except the bad guy had it modified to be like nunchucks also. And Yeah, Michael Ironside shoots him, and we get this cute moment where he gets shot in the chest, but it's revealed that he had a Viewmaster, like one of those old push lever toys. He had that with him all throughout the movie, and in fact, the way he was carrying it was like binoculars. Earlier in the movie, he like had it.
He did
around his neck, and the significance of that is that it was something given to him by his mother, and I think he had it when they were killed. But yeah, he gets shot in the chest, and it turns out the Viewmaster took the bullet for him, and then he blasts Michael Ironside. And then there's a big but. You want to get into the but?
The but is that Michael Ironside doesn't die, and Michael Ironside he takes off his patch to reveal that he is a cyborg as well. And he explains that he was made by the creator, in the creator's image. He's like, you're friends with this stupid little friendly cyborg, and he's like, that's not what I am. I follow orders or something like that. I'm not entirely sure.
He's a corporate robot.
Yeah.
So the idea is he's supposed to like hoard resources, I guess, like control power and hoard resources, which is why he's such a dick.
Yeah. And how does he get his? This is where they.
The note I have here is Robo Ironside is extraneous, but if it means giving us a laser-breathing Ironside, I'm game. Yeah. Because that seems to be the only reason why this is in the movie, is so we can have Michael Ironside stretching out his arms, going, whoa, and shooting a laser from his mouth.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and having, like, Terminator eye makeup on half his face. But yeah, they have a Dragon Ball-esque, like, laser battle. He breathes his mouth laser. Turbo Kid does his wrist blaster, and I guess Turbo Kid wins, and Michael Ironside explodes, and wouldn't you know it, a geyser of water comes out of the ground in the quarry as a result of the explosion.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah, go figure. So it turns out that there was a whole bunch of water just sitting underneath there. Now they don't have the villain anymore, so people can just drink water and be happy for a while. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't think Apple made it, though. I don't think she survives.
Yeah, if I remember right, Ironside takes her out for good. And yeah, they have a pretty legitimately, like, emotionally affecting moment where Turbo Kid is cradling dead Apple. And it's like, oh, Apple dead. But there's a repetition of, like, his mom told him that, like, all the stars in the sky represent dead people. Think Dragonheart. It's very Dragonheart-esque.
Sounds
and his
like
logic is that the apocalypse is why the sky is so bright. It's because all the people that died in the apocalypse are now in the sky. So I guess that's a mother's way of sugarcoating the end of the world for their child. So Apple says, I'll see you up in the sky someday. He's like, oh, bye.
Bye.
Apple.
So yeah, that's pretty much the movie. No sequel setup or anything like that. I feel like this was just a one and done.
I checked the Wikipedia after I watched the movie. I guess there was plans for a sequel, but that was a couple of years ago. It still could happen.
I'm fine with the one and done.
Oh yeah, I don't care to see a sequel to this. I'd like to see more from these people.
I do, yeah, I agree.
But I don't think I need more Turbo Kid. Because the way the story ends is that this particular community is now saved because they have a water source. Cowboy Kiwi seems like he's going to stick around. And Turbo Kid, though, is like, you know what? I'm going to go check out what else is out there. I took this as a result of, like, Apple told him she was from a different place.
Mm-hmm.
So I took that as him, like, wanting to see where she came from or something.
The ending, I thought, like, he was just gonna go save other little communities like this.
It's the ending of every Incredible Hulk episode, basically. Just
gotcha.
And Turbo Kid rode off into the sunset for another adventure, and I don't need to know what that adventure is.
No.
I was very pleased with this movie.
I was too.
I'm sad that I put it off as long as I did. because I was the guy championing this for quite a while, and most of my friends have seen it by now. But for some reason, like I said, I have this bad habit of not getting to the movies I actually want to see.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one. This was one we both caught up on, so neither one of us really knew what to expect.
Other than trailers and a few written reviews, I didn't know much about it.
Yeah, it's on Prime right now. So if you're
surprise.
listening to this in time, you should check it out on Prime. That way you don't wait. If you get halfway through and you're like, you know what, I'm not into this. You haven't lost any money, but you might find it a lot of fun.
Yeah, if you like 80s aesthetic and horror comedy kind of stuff, like buckets of gore that you can laugh at, definitely give it a shot.
Yeah. All right, I think that's all I had to say about that.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us as we caught up on cinema.
Yep.